Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk San Mateo. I'm your host, Officer Allison Gilmore, Public Information Officer for the San Mateo Police Department. And this is episode 4 of our second season of Real Talk. And tonight we're going to discuss San Mateo Police Department's roles in our downtown and homeless outreach units. The downtown unit officers focus on quality of life issues for the merchants and citizens in the downtown corridor. DTU officers also enforce alcohol-related laws within the bars and pubs of San Mateo. DTU consists of 3 officers who work Monday through Saturday, but are flexible to work any important date or any event and proudly work in cooperation with our DSMA. Our daytime DTU officer is also part of the San Mateo County Homeless Outreach Team, otherwise known as HOT. HOT works with homeless individuals, families, and children to get them services needed and to get them off the street and into safe housing. Tonight is a wonderful opportunity to learn about these respective units and to ask any questions you may have and to actively participate in this conversation. Right now, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Chief Barberini.
Thank you, Allison. I'd first like to congratulate Allison on her new role as our Public Information Officer. This is her first time facilitating one of our Real Talk episodes, and I know she'll do a great job. So welcome and thank you for being here. Additionally, I'd like to recognize and thank our downtown unit officers. They do a fabulous job of staying on top of issues that impact our downtown areas in the city. A lot of that is based on relationships they've developed with our partners in both the public and private sector and in the nonprofit world. And I think you're going to hear a lot about that today. So thank you to our downtown unit officers for being on the call tonight, as well as for our partners. We really appreciate not only you being here tonight, but your cooperation throughout the year as we tackle issues that impact impact our downtown areas. There's been a couple of recent programs I've been asked to mention quickly, and while they are not necessarily focused on the downtown area, they hopefully will have a significant impact on addressing some of the issues that we see down in that area. The first is a new training program we've embarked on here at the police department, and that's a mindfulness kind of resiliency type training. It's a pretty comprehensive training. It's an 8-week program that our officers attend in cohorts. We've just finished our first 2 cohorts, so we've had about 50 or 60 officers go through, and it's based on kind of an interperspective type of approach to how we do our jobs, and a resilient approach, a mindful approach to dealing with some of the critical issues in the community. And I thought that was just from a timing perspective, it's pretty interesting and relative to what I think we'll be talking about tonight, to provide our officers a unique and non-traditional perspective on dealing with some of the issues you're gonna hear about tonight, especially when we talk about substance abuse, mental health, and some homeless issues. The other is a program that we've embarked on with the county, as well as a few other cities in the area, and that's embedding a mental health clinician within our police department here. This is a partnership with the County of San Mateo. Our police department, along with 3 other police departments in the cities of Redwood City, Daly City, and South San Francisco, have partnered with the county, specifically the health department and their behavioral health and recovery services, to embed 1 clinician in each of the 4 departments that I mentioned. The cost of this clinician is being shared by both the county and the participating cities, and we're looking forward to getting that started. A lot of work has gone into this project by all of the cities and the counties. It's been approved by the County Board of Supervisors, as well as all of the respective city councils. And we are now in the recruiting phase of this project. So we're eager to bring on clinicians who will work side by side with our officers in the field. We think we'll benefit from this program in 2 ways, although I think there'll be a lot of ancillary benefits as well. But first is the immediate response. This is a co-response model, which makes it a little bit unique for our area, that provides officers in the field an additional resource on de-escalation and recognizing symptoms associated with mental health issues quickly and effectively, and also allows a trained clinician to be part of that process in order to communicate with somebody experiencing some type of crisis. The second benefit that we see of that is wraparound services. Typically, when we deal with individuals who are experiencing some type of mental health issue, we simply just try to find them help, and we triage the situation and kind of move on to our next call for service. I think with the addition of a clinician to the police department, we foresee that they'll serve as a conduit between the police department and the first responders and those who are providing treatment and services to mental health patients from a clinical standpoint. So hopefully it'll be much more impactful and effective in really hooking folks up with services, those folks who really need them, and ideally reducing the number of calls for those types of calls for service in the future to have more of an impact rather than just kind of putting a Band-Aid on the situation. So a couple of projects that are in the works that may be relative to what you're going to hear about tonight, but I'm excited to hear about what the experts have to say. So I'm gonna stop talking and I'm going to listen with all of you to this conversation, which I'm sure will be very enlightening. So thank you, Allison, and again, congratulations on the new role.
Thank you, Chief. Now let's introduce our stars for the evening. I'd like to start off with Lieutenant Matt Earnshaw. If you could tell us and how long you've been working for the city.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Earnshaw. I'm a lieutenant with the San Mateo Police Department, and this August will be my 23rd year anniversary with the city. And I'm currently a lieutenant in patrol, where I oversee the downtown unit, traffic, and our crime reduction team. I'm also an area lieutenant for Area 3, and Area 3 actually covers the downtown area. So thank you. I look forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you, Lieutenant Earnshaw. Next up, we have Sergeant Anthony Riccardi.
Hello, Anthony Riccardi. I'm a sergeant with the San Mateo Police Department. I've been here 20 years. I'm currently assigned as the administrative sergeant, and I oversee our downtown unit and our CSOs.
Thank you, Sergeant Riccardi. Next up, we have Officer Matt Haney.
Hello, Officer Matt Haney. I'm currently working for the city of San Mateo for 10 years now. Currently a downtown unit and a field training officer.
Thank you, Officer Haney. Next up, we have Officer Carlos Garcia.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Officer Carlos Garcia, San Mateo Police Department, downtown officer, daytime. I've been here for approximately 8 years now.
Thank you, Officer Garcia. Next up, Officer Dave Johnson.
I'm retired Officer Dave Johnson. I'm currently the outreach coordinator for San Mateo Police. I've worked for the department for 11 years, and the last 3 of them have been as a retired annuitant. So I work part-time in the downtown unit on day shift with our officers.
Thank you, Officer Johnson. Next up, we have Mr. Stephen Carey.
Yeah, my name is Steve Carey. I work for LifeMoves. It's a nonprofit that deals with homeless solutions since 1973.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. And last on our panel, but certainly not least, we have Miss Victoria Asfor.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria Asfor. I'm the program director for the homeless outreach team with LifeMoves. I've been with LifeMoves for approximately 4 years.
Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you for introducing yourselves. And now that we have a good idea of who's going to be answering questions and speaking to us tonight, now is the time for our first poll question of the night. So I'm going to encourage everybody who is watching and listening and paying attention to answer our poll question. First poll question of the night. In what year did the arrival of the railroad mark the beginning of downtown San Mateo? So go ahead, please answer the question so we can kind of see where you guys are. And we'll be awaiting the results while you guys complete the poll. Okay, the results are in. The vast majority of you selected 1863 as the year the arrival of the railroad marked the beginning of downtown San Mateo, but we did have 25% of our participants pick 1907. All right, well, the correct answer is 1863. So if you picked 1863, you are winning so far. All right, thanks for your participation. We have a few more poll questions later on in the evening, and we really do appreciate the participation. Okay, so now that we've finished up the poll question, I'm going to send it over to Lieutenant Earnshaw. I have a question for you. Can you please describe your role as the area lieutenant and what it means for the downtown area?
Yes, thanks, Allison. My role as the area lieutenant is it's kind of a community policing approach. And so we receive a lot of calls daily or a lot of messages that come into our police department and ask about life issues and things that need to be taken care of or what are perceived to be taken care of or might be issues in the area or the downtown. So a lot of the time I will receive some information from a resident of San Mateo or somebody who sends some information into our main desk. It's usually through an email, and then we're asked to look into a potential issue the city might have. And so I take those issues and I kind of triage them myself, and I look through it, and then I contact what group I may have to deal with. And that could be our downtown unit, it could be our traffic unit, or it could be something with our crime reduction unit. And so kind of looking at, and then it might just be an issue where we can have some patrol officers specifically go to a certain area. And a lot of the time we get calls about encampments and where they are. And so we do, on our website, we have and I think it's coming up on the screen right now, a place that you can go and you can fill out some information, and it lets us know where these encampments are. And then I can speak with our DTU officers and our homeless outreach team members, and they can go and take a look. A lot of the time, people get confused on who is responsible for certain encampments. And we have Caltrans, it takes care of the highways and the freeways, where they will, most of the time, they have their own forms, and they actually, on their website, you can go and you can pinpoint a certain area and it will tell you if that's Caltrans issue or the city police issue. And so we do a lot of that. And as you can see, if you go and fill out those lodging issues that you see on your screen, give us some information, and we will kind of make sure it gets to the appropriate people. And then hopefully we can work with LifeMoves, our homeless outreach team. And so it's basically just kind of my job as an area lieutenant is kind of triaging those issues and seeing and getting some resources out there to help.
Thank you, Lieutenant Earnshaw. Thank you for providing the information about encampments and telling us how you work as your role as the area lieutenant. Greatly appreciate it. Sergeant Riccardi, could you please explain staffing for downtown and any details the officers may work, like working weekends, working the bars, or anything specific to the downtown area?
Sure. Our downtown unit is comprised of Officer Carlos Garcia and retired Officer Dave Johnson. They work primarily daytime. Our two nighttime officers are Officer Pye and Officer Haney, and they work on two separate teams. So we have coverage downtown throughout the day and throughout the night. Our daytime officers focus primarily on quality of life issues and homeless, and deal a lot with the MA. Our nighttime guys mostly deal with the bars, entertainment permits, and things like that. We do staff a lot of our downtown events, like the wine walk when we had events, the music in the park and those events. So you'll see our downtown officers staffed at those events quite often.
Thanks, Sergeant Riccardi. Much appreciated. Officer Haney, could you please elaborate on your role as a member of the downtown unit and what exactly that entails? And what does a typical day look like for you?
Okay, as a member of the downtown unit, I primarily respond to quality of life calls for service. I ensure the security and safety of those living downtown, working downtown, and visiting downtown. I tend to focus on the municipal code. That's a very important part that our citizens like to see enforced, so it's my bread and butter. A typical day for me is responding to anything in the downtown area, exactly. That includes a lot of mental health crises, alcoholic problems, and bar issues.
Would you say your calls kind of vary because what shift are you working? Do you work 2 to 2, correct?
Yes,
Does
so
that kind of contribute to the different type of calls you get?
yes, I get a wider range of calls. Starts off in the afternoon, so there's still a lot of businesses open, still a lot of people out and about. So that can be a lot of the mental health crisis stuff that I deal with. And then later on, I transition into more of a bar, restaurant check, things like that. So you'll see me downtown on foot, on a bicycle, and sometimes in a car. And if I'm not alone, I'm often training. So I get to teach my recruits a little bit how to deal with the downtown and mental health.
Thank you so much, Officer Haney. Appreciate the insight. Now is the time for our second poll question. So be prepared to answer it. Should be able to see it in a couple of seconds here. And here we have it. When is parking free downtown? So if you participate and please indicate your answer, we're going to tabulate the results and we'll be able to give that to you shortly. Okay, the results are in and everyone who answered got the answer correct. Parking is free downtown after 6 p.m. daily on Sundays and holidays. So we got an A+ for that one. Congratulate yourselves, pat yourselves on the back. Excellent, very, very good. Now, moving on from poll question 2, I'm gonna go to a member, an active.
Sorry, I think we're having some technical difficulties, but I'll jump in. Like Allison said, I'm the daytime downtown officer for the San Mateo Police Department, and my primary focus is to work with the downtown community and businesses. I'm primarily on foot with retired Officer Dave Johnson, and we respond to calls for service as well as proactively address any habitual or underlying issues to maximize the quality of life for those working and living and visiting downtown San Mateo. I'm also citywide homeless outreach and work with a team consisting of retired Officer Dave Johnson as well as our LifeMoves homeless outreach case manager. And we meet with homeless subjects to provide services in the field, which include assessments for shelter placement or permanent supportive housing.
Officer Garcia, are you ever on the bike?
I am on the bike, but mostly on foot.
How does bike patrol look differently?
How does bike patrol look differently?
Are there any, is your enforcement different? I mean, what's the difference with it? Why do you use the bike at sometimes?
Well, I mean, it's a good tool for us to utilize. I know Officer Haney uses it a lot more at night. I'm more primarily on foot with retired Officer Dave Johnson, and but it's a good tool to utilize. And we could ride in the parks and conduct enforcement, or things of that nature with the bikes.
Thank you for that, Officer Garcia. I do have another question. So what would you suggest a business owner do if in the course of their business, whether it be during the business day or actually after hours, what should they do when they find a particular homeless person either blocking their entrance to their building or on the actual property?
Well, first and foremost, we don't encourage the businesses to engage with any of the homeless. We prefer that they call San Mateo Police Department, and we'll come out and we'll contact them. If they're known subjects, we have a pretty good relationship with the homeless community out here in downtown San Mateo, just because they see us regularly. And we'll just basically engage with them and we'll get LifeMoves involved and basically connect them to services and yeah, that's pretty much it.
How are business owners able to contact you? Do you attend meetings with business owners regularly? Do you make yourself available, like passing out cards, email addresses? What's the easiest way for business owners to be able to actually access you and for you to hear their kind of complaints and concerns?
So generally, some of the businesses have my work cell and they'll contact me directly. And when they do, I'll head out and handle the situation. So there's oftentimes where patrol doesn't even know we're out responding to these types of calls for service, and which is a benefit for patrol, that they don't have to respond to these types of calls, and we could just take care of them right away.
Thanks, Officer Garcia. This is going to be a follow-up, obviously, for actually the both of you. You mentioned, Officer Garcia, that you have a lot of regulars or people that you're familiar with. Obviously, that's going to come from the number of encounters that you have with these individuals. What happens when you run into situations where you're dealing with the same regulars and it seems to be the same problem over and over again? How do you triage that? How do you deal?
So that's where the continued engagement comes, and we rely heavily on LifeMoves, Vicky and Lynette. We rely on them heavily for incidents like this where
it looks like we're having technical difficulties.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is where we rely with on LifeMoves to come out and help us, continue to engage with them to try to get them going on services. And sometimes it's it's difficult to get them to engage, but the more often that we contact them, the more likely they will engage in future services.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Officer Garcia. A lot of insight there. Really, really, really appreciate that. Officer Johnson, I realize you're retired, but you came back to work as a liaison between the police department and the homeless. Can you explain how and why that happened?
Absolutely. I worked about 6 to 7 years in the downtown unit day shift, like Officer Garcia is doing. Really enjoyed that position, and San Mateo Police has always really prioritized homeless and mental health outreach. And I really missed my position when I retired, so the timing was kind of perfect, and I was excited when they offered me the opportunity to come back in a part-time capacity, doing basically the same job for the most part that I was doing before. Due to the complexity of the work, the amount of relationships we have with basic social service agencies, it takes a long time to get acclimated in this position and to get your relationships going with people. So I was kind of in the really comfortable with that area of the assignment, so it was perfect when they brought me back. It's a really fulfilling position because we focus on problem solving, more like a long-term solutions. And getting someone housed who's formerly homeless is a pretty amazing feeling. So I really enjoy being.
You talked about the problem solving and getting someone into housing. Do you have maybe a story or an anecdote about the process that takes for you? And I mean, not necessarily the timeline, but if you could just expound upon that, it'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I have quite a few success stories. One of the biggest ones I had was a gentleman who was a severe alcoholic, a veteran, and he had blackouts when he would drink. So he would forget that he even was having contact with the police, and he was very difficult and combative when he was drunk, but very cooperative when he was sober. And I established a rapport with him. It took probably 3 or 4 years before he finally really started to open up and accept the assistance that we provided him. I liaisoned with him to the veterans group, and we actually amazingly got him into a program and got him housed. And it was one of those things where I never fully give up on anyone. I'll always offer that assistance to them, but I was really losing hope inside, but I didn't show that to him. And it really made a big impact to him. He wrote a letter to me, he got housed, and it was just a pretty amazing success story.
That's really great to hear. And it explains a lot why even after retirement, you chose to come back. Thank you again for that. Now that we've concluded with Retired Officer Johnson, it is time for our last poll question of the night. So we're going to get that up and loaded for you. Please answer the question, and then we'll get our answers tabulated and we'll share it. So it's a two-part question. The first part is, due to COVID, there is no current one-day homeless count, but this many people were counted as unsheltered homeless in San Mateo County in 2019. So go ahead and pick your answer for question number one. Is of those, this many were counted as unsheltered homeless in the city of San Mateo. So the first part of the question is just going to focus on the number of unsheltered homeless. Okay, the results are in. Sorry for the delay, but due to COVID, the number of unsheltered homeless in San Mateo County 2019, that count would be, the number one result from you guys was 775. However, the correct answer is 901. So we were off a little bit there. Sorry about that. Our perfect score from last time is no longer perfect. And the leading answer for the number counted as unsheltered homeless in the city of San Mateo, the number one answer was 8, and the correct answer was actually 74. Only one person got that correct. So if you're the person that guessed 74, give yourself a huge pat on the back. Okay. Now that we've finished off our poll questions for the night, it's time for us to shift gears a little bit. Obviously, we work hand in hand, but we've already spoken to our police officers this evening. We'll go back to you in a little bit, but now it's time to talk to Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey, you've been a part of the collaboration between LifeMoves and the police department from the very beginning. Can you give us a little history?
Certainly. I've been working with the downtown unit for a little over 10.5 years. And the homeless outreach team was actually started by a police officer named Robert Anderson in 2007. There was a lot of homeless complaints, and the police, the only thing they could do was either take them to psych ward, to the emergency room, or to jail, which is really not a solution for the homeless problems. So the San Mateo Police Department started the homeless outreach team, which consisted obviously of the police, stakeholders such as LifeMoves, St. Vincent de Paul, Samaritan House, and also some county agencies, Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, and the Human Service Agency. And they partnered to help about 30 individuals that were homeless in downtown San Mateo. This just shows how progressive the San Mateo Police Department is. So 10 years ago, they started a homeless outreach team that nobody else in the San Mateo County was doing till 10 years later. After that, they organized that team. They started housing people, but there was a lot of challenges. Most of the people that were on the street were out there for an average of about 10.2 years, some as much as 17 years and one person with 25 years. They didn't do too well in standard housing. So the San Mateo Police Department got together with the city, and they purchased an old SRO building. No, SRO is single room occupancy hotel, which is almost as old as the city. This was built in 1869. And what they did is called permanent supportive housing. So they took their most vulnerable clients and they housed them here. And so it's supportive. Here at the hotel, we have a case manager that helps them with all their mental health and addiction needs. The San Mateo Police at downtown units, Officer Garcia and retired Officer Johnson, are at the Van Dome almost daily, not for law enforcement, mostly for case management. And they've known the clients here, and every client that comes to the Van Dome is placed here by the downtown unit. So it's a vast and long history. It's, as far as my knowledge, it's about the only city in the area that actually had the forthright to tackle the homeless problem in a positive way. And they did it a long time ago, starting in 2007. So it's a good history.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Thank you, Mr. Carey. Sorry for the technical difficulties. One moment. Sorry about the technical difficulties. It's part of Zoom meetings and working on the fly. But Mr. Carey, I do have a follow-up question. You're also a member of the DSMA. Can you please tell us about the collaboration between the PD and the business owners, or any of the issues you see where we work well together? And also, could you please talk about the areas where we could improve?
Certainly. The DSMA is the Downtown San Mateo Association. I've been on this board for about 8 years. The collaboration with the police it's the whole, basically the whole meeting. Carlos and priorly Dave have been at every meeting of the DSMA, and they do an annual report. But what's more important, if there's an issue in downtown San Mateo, for instance, if it's serious, like there was somebody was smashing into Walgreens and having a burglary, but it kind of heightens everybody in the downtown area. But the police come in and explain what's happening, what they're doing about it, and why it happened and why it won't happen again. Kind of brings the temperature down in downtown. Even something as simple as there's a gentleman walking around kind of talking about his First Amendment rights, and he was disturbing, but Carlos came in and explained that gentleman has that right, and maybe just not to engage him. And this way the merchants understand what's going on and can let their clients know, don't worry, he's harmless. We've already talked to Officer Garcia. It's not going to be a problem. So everything that we talk about, like currently we were talking about putting a public bathroom in downtown San Mateo, and most of the questions are focused to the police. What happens if there's drug use? What happens if there's homeless issues? So without the police at these meetings, it'd be basically ineffective. Areas of improvement, as Carlos, our Officer Garcia explained, he's on the beat a lot. And this is like, for a community police officer, that's like the most important thing. There's nothing the merchants enjoy more is when they see Officer Garcia and retired Officer Johnson walking down B Street. Where I think there needs to be improvement, we need 2 Officer Garcias. It's a lot involved. I mean, besides the normal police duties, the mental health and addiction and homeless problems, he's also got to be, friendly to the merchants. Let them know that he's there. He's concerned about what their issues are. That's asking a lot of one police officer. So I kind of believe that even 2.5 would be good. An officer with Officer Garcia, and maybe somebody like a CSO that can, kind of shake hands with a lot of the merchants. And that's what I think the only thing that needs improvement.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for your wonderful insight, Mr. Carey. I will be speaking with Chief Barberini about the possibility of a Officer Garcia clone. I'm not quite sure that's going to happen, but we can always try. All right. Thank you for that wonderful insight, Mr. Carey.
You're welcome.
And now it is time for us to get to our last panelist. And as I said earlier, last but certainly not least, Ms. Asfer, thank you for being patient, and your participation is going to be great right here. As more of a boots on the grounds representative for LifeMoves, can you explain what your work looks like and how you work with our San Mateo officers to assist the most vulnerable in our population?
Yeah, thank you. So as part of the homeless outreach team, we conduct daily outreach to reach and serve vulnerable families and individuals throughout San Mateo County. We really meet clients where they are, and we support them around their overall functioning, and that is linking them to supportive services. A lot of our clients, their needs are high, and the officers know, and they have an established relationship with them. So when clients are identified in the community, we're out there and bringing the services to them. And that includes going to encampment sites, under bridges, and walking along the freeways and walking downtown. It is such a pleasure to know that a lot of our clients know them very well, first name and last name. We have a great relationship with them. This is all done out in the field. So when we're linking clients to services and bringing services to them, the police officers are there with us. And it's really meeting them where they are by providing services in their environment. And like I mentioned again, in encampments, under bridges, and this is daily. This is every single day. This is always connecting them to services, shelter, housing. The goal is to get them to permanent housing, but we all know it doesn't take one time, it takes 50 attempts. But it's so wonderful to see that the officers are really patient with our clients. They know them very well, and when we make contact, they already have that trust built with them. The best part of the collaborative efforts and work is the officers already know, they've already established a relationship, and when there is a request, we're responding. They provide these referrals, and the referrals are mostly with clients that are most vulnerable. So we get to meet the most vulnerable clients in the community, and then we get the pleasure of connecting them to these services. And I've said it like 3-4 times, but that is the bulk of what we do. San Mateo Police Department, provides a lot of referrals, and that lead to identifying the most vulnerable clients who needs direct services. But we are part of their utility belt, and we're their toolkit, but we tackle situations together. We have learned that the police are the spear point when clients are connected and contacted in the community, and we provide those services. So it's really a collaborative approach. It's not a one size fit all. And the beauty of it is that we work together hand in hand, and they know their clients as we do.
Thank you, Ms. Astor. I really appreciate that. I'm sure our listeners do as well. You mentioned some of the core service agencies, and obviously you mentioned them in passing. I'd like to share basically a slide that it actually lists and details a little bit more about those core services. Could you explain it as I share that on the screen?
Yes. So these core agencies in several cities, you will see that there's about 9 core agencies throughout San Mateo County. If there are any concerned citizens, or if you encounter a client experiencing homelessness, the best approach would be sending them to the core agency. So here in San Mateo is Samaritan House. There they'll have homeless services, they can get into shelter, and that is the only way to get into shelter, is going through a core agencies or through LifeMoves. You can also receive additional homeless services, additional services if somebody needs support in rent in all, as well. But normally we connect clients to the core agency, or we conduct the assessment to get clients into shelter.
Thank you, Ms. Asper. I really appreciate that. And just gonna stop sharing that screen right now. Thank you very much. I actually have a follow-up question for retired officer Dave Johnson. Could you actually detail a little bit more, since this does come up actually, at least in conversations with citizens and just information that's out there, could you share how you deal with people who actually have dual diagnosis issues? Like, What's the difference when you're dealing with someone who's afflicted with an alcohol problem as well as a drug problem? How does that change the way that you go about it, about your job and the services that you offer, and just in general, what kind of resources are available to somebody who has that dual diagnosis?
It's really common to have people with drug and alcohol problems, with mental health issues, and as you're mentioning, the dual diagnosis combination of both of those issues. One of the issues that really where we come in is when people don't want assistance or they don't think they want assistance. People who want help in San Mateo County can get help. There's a lot of availability for that. But when they're not cooperating and they don't want assistance, that's when the challenges really hit us, and that's where we get called. We always start with rapport building. We have somebody we're working with right now who has exactly this problem. He has schizophrenia and severe alcoholism, and also some drug addiction issues. So one thing we noticed about him is that his mood really fluctuates. Sometimes he's in a really happy, good mood. Sometimes he's in an extremely bad mood, and we have to really adjust when we bring up certain topics. We're trying to get him into a treatment program. We've had it set up several times, then he'll deny it. So he'll be in a bad mood that day or going through a withdrawal. So we have to actually sometimes time when we can get him into these programs. When is he going to be hopefully in the best mood? Because a lot of these programs are not just call and they show up that same day. It's something you have to plan in advance, get certain days. You have to get cleared by the hospital. So, and sometimes you have to use the enforcement angle as well. Sometimes people just are not cooperative and you have to work on enforcement if there are crimes being committed. The good thing is the district attorney's office and our city attorney are also on board with trying to get these people help. It's not a throw away the key, lock the door type of thing. So we hit them with every tool we have, and just try to get them to trust us and try to get them treatment if they need treatment. And then once they get clean from the drugs and alcohol or get medication, then we can get them to the next step where Victoria can help us get them into temporary housing, hopefully a voucher for permanent housing.
Thank you, Officer Johnson. A follow-up to something you mentioned is, could you discuss how you work with the city attorney and the DA's office in those type of cases?
Yes, we had a case I can remember from years ago with a subject who had an alcohol problem. He had mental health, and he was panhandling in downtown San Mateo for many years. And he would drink in public, and it was just a nuisance. We get a lot of complaints, and we would issue citations, and it was just the revolving door that we talked about before. And so finally I went to the city attorney and we sat down and said, what are we going to do? These tickets for open container are not going to solve this problem. He's not cooperating. We've offered him every type of treatment that's available. So we actually created a master case, and we started documenting multiple open container citations. So we finally had enough that they could actually prosecute and get an actual bail amount that could actually get him in custody. But as soon as he was arrested, we put the word out, and then the county got involved, and immediately he was not immediately, probably within, I'd say probably a few months, he was transferred to an appropriate place where he could get the proper care he needed. And we haven't seen him in downtown San Mateo since, and it was a successful ending to that problem.
Thank you so much for that information. I think it was really useful for people to be able to understand a little bit better about how other facets of our government are working together to be able to deal with these problems and issues. One of the questions that's actually come up, and Officer Johnson, you'd be able to answer this as well as a couple other panelists. Could you explain the difference between a wet and a dry shelter?
Yes, we have the two main shelters we have is Safe Harbor, which is considered a wet shelter, and Maple Street, which is considered a dry shelter. The dry shelter is more strict about the rules about being high or intoxicated. You cannot use drugs, you cannot use alcohol, and if you do and you're under influence, you can be removed from that program. So it's a very strict shelter, but there's a lot of benefits to that. Some people really don't want to be around other people who are drunk or high because it puts them in a bad position when they're trying to get clean. Safe Harbor allows people who are intoxicated to get shelter, which is also good to have because sometimes there are people who are just not in a position where they can get clean and they have withdrawals and other serious medical issues, but they still need shelter. So when we are talking to people on the street, we will bring this up and talk to them. And some people will say, hey, I do not want to go where other people are intoxicated. I can't be around that. Or some will say, no, I'm really not quite ready to make that commitment to a full program. So I'm okay with that. So that's the difference between the two. And that's those are the situations that we refer people to them.
Thank you again for that insight, Officer Johnson. At this time, we have a few questions that we're going to ask of our panelists. People have been asking a few questions. And the first one, I'm going to open it up to Lieutenant Earnshaw and Sergeant Riccardi and see if they have some insights as to how to answer this question. An anonymous attendee wants to know, what is the best way for people who witness people panhandling on the street and specifically maybe in front of grocery stores? Is there a way to help them out without giving them money on the spot, especially when those individuals have children with them?
Anthony, you want to go first, or I can start? I know personally for me, with my family, I think dealing with people in those situations can be interesting. And I think it really comes down to your comfort level. I know my family and I, in the last year and a half or 2 years, started taking our, if we're out at a restaurant and we don't finish the plates, we ask for some to-go boxes, and we'll actually walk out on the street and we'll hand them to people that we see. That's just something my family and I do. But I think you have to consider safety in all situations. So I think it really comes down to your comfort level. Sergeant Riccardi, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with you, Matt. Like Officer Johnson and Officer Garcia and both people from LifeMoves that we talked about, a lot of these people have mental health issues. A lot of them suffer from alcoholism and drug abuse. So, be careful when you're dealing with people, and when they might look innocent, but you never know how they're going to react. So like Matt said, you guys just need to be careful, need to be aware. If you feel comfortable handing them some leftover food, that's great. But again, and then you have to consider, do you have your family with you and your surroundings? So it's kind of a difficult question to answer because there's a lot of variables that come into play when you're talking about homeless people, asking for money or asking for help. So, just know that for the most part, if you're in San Mateo, you can pretty much guarantee that we've reached out to them and we've offered them services. These guys downtown do an outstanding job of they go out of their way to find people to offer services day in and day out, like they explained. So if you're in San Mateo and you come across somebody who's homeless or begging for money, I can pretty much guarantee that they've been offered services and our guys are working with them.
I'll just add quickly too that a lot of the time, I don't want to say a lot of the time, but there are times when they could be trying to scam you into something. So be careful of where you go, what road you go down with some of these people, because they could be, telling you, oh, someone's hurt, I need to help them, please give me some money. So it's really, you have to just be careful is what I can add right now. But be careful, because they do try to scam you as well, and you have to be aware of that.
Thank you, Lieutenant Earnshaw. Thank you, Sergeant Riccardi. Once again, we do have a few more questions that have popped up. And this one is a great question for Mr. Carey. I know probably Officer Garcia and Officer Johnson could answer it as well, but it's a question about the Vendome. How many people does the Vendome have room for at a time, and how long is their stay? And just a follow-up of my own, because you mentioned the Vendome earlier and I didn't follow up on it. Could you more describe what kind of activities and resources are attributable to the Vendome?
Yeah, certainly. The Vendome houses 16 people, again, with an average time on the street of 10.2 years. This is permanent supportive housing. This is their home. They have a lease. They have tenants' rights. Basically, they stay here until they pass on. A lot of times with the Vendome, it's a place where they're going to die in dignity. They're going to die here. They're not going to die behind a dumpster, in Central Park. Now, the fact that, like Dave Johnson was saying, most of the people here are dual diagnosed, a lot of addiction and mental health issues. but they have a home. If they're downtown and they've had too much to drink, Officer Garcia can simply just walk them home. All the officers have keys for this place. Everybody that lives here was referred by the San Mateo Police Department. Now, with that said, we got people with a lot of social anxiety, so we try to get them socially engaged. In fact, the San Mateo Police started this. I remember these are people out there for 10 years, no Christmas, no Easter, no birthdays, no family. Right off the bat, the San Mateo Police Department started a Christmas party where most of the force was, not most of the force, the downtown unit and a lot of the administration come. Santa usually comes on a Harley. They pass out Christmas presents and they serve food to all the clients here. We've reciprocated by each year we have a barbecue specifically for the downtown unit so that the people that they basically saved can say thank you. Not last year, but 2 years ago, we had 94 people here. The mayor was here, a lot of council people, all of San Mateo Police's administration, LifeMoves administration, most importantly, the tenants that reside here, and currently people that are still residing on the street. There was one lady, she's a prostitute, drug user, and St. Vincent de Paul gave her some nice clothing. She spent a nice night in the motel, and she showed up to this picnic, and there's a beautiful picture of her and Captain Norris, who's now a chief in Menlo Park, sitting together breaking bread. So here's somebody that's a kind of a police problem, breaking bread with the captain of the San Mateo Police Department. So in fact, if you're in downtown San Mateo and you're a merchant or somebody that works in the area, if you don't know about the Vendome or are not helping the Vendome, you're just not cool. This has kind of become a community center for downtown San Mateo. And again, the police are here often. During the Warriors run, there was almost more cops and homeless people sitting here watching the Warriors game together. Once they get here, there's zero law enforcement. Again, the police officers that deal with my tenants, they deal with them as case managers. I hope that explains it.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Thank you for that wonderful insight, and more importantly, that story about the actual appreciation barbecue. I think that is definitely something I know I barely knew about it, and one of my really good friends was a DTU officer. That's really cool to hear, and a really, really great story. I'm glad you were able to share that with us. I have a few more questions that have come in. And this is just generally, so the panel in and of themselves, a lot of people will have insight in this. The question is, do you see a rise in families experiencing homelessness? And I'm going to kick that one off to Officer Haney, since he's downtown, and maybe he's seen more homeless families parking up in maybe cars downtown or behind businesses. If you could provide some insight, that'd be great.
I know personally in the city of San Mateo, we do not see a rise of homelessness in families. Like Officer Johnson mentioned, this is one of the best counties to receive help in. So we are pretty on top of that. We do have a lot of resources that focus on families first. So that's something we do not see a rise in.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate that insight in there. And this will just actually dovetail into a couple other questions that we have that just came in. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. We're good on that. Question. Going off of Officer Haney's point about not seeing a rise in families experiencing homelessness, are you seeing at all different types of people being afflicted with homelessness, like in a post-COVID kind of condition? Is that something that you're seeing? And I'm going to direct that question to Officer Johnson, Officer Haney, and Officer Garcia, and as well as Sergeant Riccardi. I mean, anybody who can really kind of give some insight here.
You know, I personally have not noticed a huge increase in homelessness or different homeless during COVID. One thing I did notice though is that when everyone was home, a lot of areas shut down and closed up. The Starbucks was closed. You couldn't go in there. You couldn't go to the library. The parks were closed. People were home looking out their windows from their offices at home. So we were getting a lot more perceived visibility of homeless. I didn't equate that with an increase in homelessness. It was more just that they're more visible, less people on the street, more homeless visible, and more people capable of reporting it from home because they were not in their offices. So I did notice an increase where it appeared to be a lot more homeless people, but I think a lot of it was that they're being driven from their normal areas of comfort back into the spotlight, so to speak.
Just wanted to piggyback off of what Dave said. We did, during COVID, we did see homeless coming in just from different parts of the Bay Area, and reason being is because at this time the public transit system was all free, and we would see transients using the public transit and just coming in and out of our city, and they wouldn't necessarily put roots down here in San Mateo, but they would pass through, and we would contact them. And so that's kind of what I initially saw during COVID. We're not seeing it so much now. It kind of seems like that has kind of died down a little bit, and people have kind of went back to their original locations, or they just kind of moved on to from San Mateo to just different parts of maybe the Bay Area.
Excellent. Thank you, Officer Garcia, Officer Johnson, Officer Haney, for those answers to the questions. We're also getting some questions about RVs, parking and homelessness, and actually seeking some clarifications on our municipal code as it pertains to homelessness and RVs. And to that, I'm going to direct the question to Lieutenant Earnshaw.
What is the can you hear me? It seems like muted.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is the question, do we consider people in RVs homeless, or?
The question is looking for clarification on RVs that are parked along city streets in San Mateo, as whether or not that alone, someone basically living in the RV, will that constitute homelessness, a municipal code violation, some type of criminal aspect? People are just trying to figure out how homelessness pertains to people who choose to live in RVs and then park them on the streets.
Yeah, so this issue has been coming up as we meet with Public Works lately, and we've actually sent out our DTU, and Carlos and I think Dave have both gone out and made contact. They are homeless. Their vehicles are their home, so they don't actually have a residence to go to and receive mail. So they do live out of their vehicles, and we're working on ways to help them out. Our recent count we did count about 9 total in the city about 6 weeks ago, and so we're looking for different ways. There are cities that have some blueprints that might be successful for us to deal with these people with their RVs and give them a place. So those are things we're looking into, but we send our officers out, make contact with them, and see if we can get them services as well, though.
Thanks, Lieutenant Earnshaw. I appreciate it. We are now at the 7 o'clock hour. And being that we're at the 7 o'clock hour, we're going to start to wrap things up. But before we wrap things up, we are going to open up questions to anybody who would like to ask their question live at this time. So for anybody who would like to do that, please make yourself known. No one knows. If you would like to ask a question, attendees, if you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay. It doesn't look like we have any live takers for any questions. So going once, going twice. All right. It does not look like we have any questions. So we will close off our Q&A section right now. And so that part of the evening is over. However, we are going to end the evening by going back to each one of our panelists for kind of some closing remarks. And we'll start that off with Lieutenant Earnshaw.
Thanks, Allison. I thought tonight's conversation was really good, and I thought it provided a lot of insight from all our resources. And so just know, as a city, we do constantly look to improve ourselves with these type of issues. And I can promise you that we will continue to do so moving forward. Thank you for the time this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lieutenant Earnshaw. Next is Sergeant Riccardi.
Thanks, Allison. Just to echo what Lieutenant Earnshaw said earlier, we take these problems head on and we seek them out. And within the city of San Mateo, like you guys have heard from a lot of these panelists tonight, we get ahead of the curve. And our downtown officers do a fabulous job working with LifeMoves and their partners, and they are constantly offering services. So like I said earlier, I'm going to say it again, when you see homeless people downtown, when you see people living out of their cars and you're in the city of San Mateo, you have to know that we're out there offering them help and we're trying to get them services, and we're already working on those problems ahead of time. So thank you guys very much. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sergeant Riccardi. Up next, Officer Matt Haney.
Thank you for having me. I don't want to continue on saying the same thing. I'll just leave with, if you see something, say something. It leads to more engagements, and then we can provide more services. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Haney, for your concise but very timely answer. Officer Carlos Garcia.
Just want to say thank you to actually Vicky and Steve. They provided some good insight. And we do really depend on their partnership when we're trying to tackle these problems that we see pretty much every day. So thank you very much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Officer Garcia. Retired Officer Dave Johnson.
Just to reiterate what a few people have already said is we really do depend on the information that comes from the community about, especially about the homeless. We take pride in being on top of it very quickly. I think the quickest response I had to a homeless call was about 3 minutes from when someone got off a train, and I was there about 3 minutes later. And we really like to stay on top of it and really help these people out. So if you have a complaint or a concern, don't hesitate to call us. We're happy to help out.
Thank you, Officer Johnson. Up next, Mr. Carey.
Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate how progressive and ahead of the curve the San Mateo Police Department are in these problems. I'm on 4 county boards that deal with homeless issues, and kind of the city of San Mateo really kind of sets the standard when we talk about issues. You know, from starting the very first homeless outreach team 10 years before anybody else did in this county, starting permanent supportive housing for its most vulnerable. There's really no mid-sized city that does that. I mean, Boston and San Francisco do a good job, but not a mid-sized city. It's actually quite phenomenal. And then having retired Officer Johnson as a non-uniformed ex-police officer going out is kind of ahead of the curve again. That seems to be kind of the future of policing. So this police department has always been way ahead of the curve in the 12 years that I've got to have the honor of serving with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Ms. Asford.
Thank you so much for having us. We do appreciate the collaboration and the ongoing support. Should you see a client experiencing homelessness, please refer them to the core agency or contact the San Mateo Police Department, and they will contact us, and we'll do our very best to respond in a timely manner. Thank you.
And to close this part out, Chief Barberini.
Thank you, Allison, and congratulations. Nice job on your first Real Talk episode. Well done. Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate what's been said here. This is not, it's been a good conversation. Hopefully, folks have taken something away from it. I'd like to thank all of our participants. Your collaboration and the manner in which you work together is key in addressing this issue. It's clear that this is not an issue that handcuffs are going to solve, that we really need to work together and find alternative measures and resources on how to provide the necessary service to deal with this problem holistically and comprehensively. And I think that we are taking steps to do that. As Mr. Carey mentioned, I think the city does a pretty good job of trying to stay ahead of the curve and thinking outside the box in addressing these issues. So thank you to our participants tonight, our officers, our valuable partners, and for those that have tuned in. The fact that you're here listening means you care and you're interested and you're engaged, and that's half the battle. And we couldn't, everyone here is a partner, including those that have tuned in to watch, and we rely on everyone to address quality of life issues and make the city as best it can be. So thanks, Allison. I appreciate the opportunity, and I've enjoyed listening. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief. And to close this out, just want to thank each and every one of the participants we've had today, from the officers to our partners at LifeMoves. I think each and every panelist provided unique individual insight that was able to let our viewers and each other learn more about the different services, resources, and issues surrounding homelessness and just our downtown area in San Mateo. Downtown San Mateo is a robust, wonderful area, and tonight we highlighted obviously some of the great things, and we highlighted some of the issues, and we had an open communication for problem solving, solutions, and ways to move forward. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your interest. And on that note, looking forward to the next Real Talk, which will be in the future. We'll be posting information on that on our Nixle and Nextdoor platforms. But until then, you can reach us, this office, at pdpio@cityofsanmateo.org. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. I appreciate your presence. We all appreciate your presence. God bless. Thank you.